Every day, we are learning more about our evolving world. Every day, ideas are born. Challenges become opportunities. To succeed, we need people with the vision, passion, and the knowledge to turn opportunity into reality. That's us at ABB. Thinkers, engineers, scientists, innovators. The ideal partners to unlock customer value through the domain expertise of a digital pioneer. We have the strength to realize the once unthinkable. Writing a future where cities are free from traffic emissions. Where buildings produce more energy than they consume. And renewable energy knows no borders, traveling across countries and continents. A future where machines can tell us how they feel, where ships with sensors communicate to navigate more efficiently. A future where robots work hand in hand with humans. We are driving the progress our world needs and creating value for our customers with smarter, faster, more reliable solutions. Day after day, we bring visions to life. Let's write the future together. ABB.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be with you tonight here at Imperial College. I have to say I'm humbled what I saw today already. This is a place where technology is not only used, that technology is born, that technology is being shaped. And for us as a company, active as an industrial engineering firm, it's quite important to be present, not only to tell, but also to listen. I was so intrigued by the different labs that I was able to visit this afternoon. I have to say, it's good to be here, and I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to spend time with you. As was said in the introduction, I think it will be this evening the key topic that I want to talk about is one of the parts of ABB's portfolio. I really want to talk about the future of energy and electricity. And I can tell you, when I joined ABB in 2005, one of my friends said to me, how can you join such a boring company? Because power grids is so boring. You switch on the power plant, you switch on the factory, and there we go. How wrong was he when you look at today's world? So that's what I want to share with you tonight. I really want to talk about the role of electricity in the context of what's going on around us, in the context of the climate change that we have to act on now, and there we have to talk with each other and see what we can imagine. You can even feel in this room that climate change is going on, so if you allow me, I will take off my jacket, and I would encourage everybody else in the room as well, because it's getting a little bit warm here, and I hope you forgive me for taking off the jacket. So what I want to do is share with you a little bit what's going on in the world. But before we go there, why here in London? And why I'm so humbled to be here at this site. If you're in London and talk about electricity, you need to realize that the electric motor was basically developed and first time used by Michael Faraday here, and that's now many, many years ago, more than 160 years ago. Really amazing. And then you look at the Savoy Theatre and you realize that the first time a commercial building was equipped with electricity, it's again here in London. So there is no better place to talk about electricity and to get going. Now, as London is a pioneer in the field of electricity, ABB is a pioneer in technology as well. And you have probably realized we do a lot of stuff. And I can tell you sometimes it's even difficult for me to explain, or at least it used to be difficult. And to tell you a true story, given the complexity of ABB, what's all going on, a little anecdote out of my own life. When I got appointed CEO, I called up my mom in the evening. And I said, hey mom, I've been appointed CEO. He said, oh, that's great, my boy. Can you tell me one more time what your company is doing? And I started a little bit doing motors and drives and transformers and robots and breakers. And he said, hold on a second. Can't you say that with simpler terms? So here we go. What is really ABB? ABB is a pioneering technology leader for utilities, industry, and transport and infrastructure globally. That's our firm. We are in business since more than 130 years. By coincidence, we also employ more than 130,000 people. So there's a lot of jobs out there. We already had the first discussions about jobs this afternoon, and I would welcome many applications coming from you. Not too early. I know your professors want you to stay around and do your research, but some of you might want to leave, and then you're most welcome to come into ABB. We are nicely balanced around the world, and we have changed it fundamentally. 2005, when I joined ABB, we had about half of our business in Europe. We had about 35% in the emerging markets and very little in the Americas. And today we have 1/3 in Europe, we have 1/3 in the Americas, and we have 1/3 in Asia, Middle East, Africa, through a pretty well-balanced growth story in the last years. So when you take our company and say, okay, this pioneering technology leader, I understand you're doing technology, but what do you really do at Bavaria? What's your value proposition to the world, and what do you contribute here? We basically do two things. We bring power from any power plant to any consumption point of electricity, and we automate the industries from natural resources to the ready-made product. And to run this, when I started as CEO, I had the ambition to say all of our businesses should be number 1 or 2 in their respective fields. And today, the 4 businesses that fulfill this value proposition are in that space. In power grids, where we take the power from any power plant to the substation, we're number 1 globally. We have a business that is more than 100 years around, 12 billion business, active in more than 100 countries. In electrification, we take the power from the substation to any consumption point, whether it's a data center, a building, a factory, an EV charging station. We've got a strong business. And on the automation side, we have industrial automation, which is basically control-based solutions, DCS systems for the process industry. And I was very happy to see one upstairs in the lab that we have equipped with our technology, but also automating factories and machines. And in industry, we also do robotics and motion, so it was this afternoon really, really exciting for me to look at the robotics activities that you have here. My heart started beating a little bit better, because our robotics today is number 2 in the world. We are number 2 behind Fanuc in Japan. And we're number 1 on the motors and drive side. And again, the discussion this afternoon, where we looked at the IoT solutions that you have in the motor area is quite exciting, and I'm very, very happy that I will spend some time with you. For us as a pioneering technology leader, it's very, very important that we continuously shape the future. But our company is not only about the what. I believe very strongly in a value-based performance culture. And we even put our values down and said very clearly, how do we run this company? And we defined 5 value pairs. And you might say every company has them. That's right, many companies have values. But in our case, it's directly woven in the annual evaluation process. Does somebody really live these values? It's woven into the promotion process. So if somebody doesn't live these values, he is very, or she is very welcome not to be with ABB, because that's the pattern how we want to do the business. One of the core values, and for me basically the core value of our existence, is innovation. Our company is a very strong innovative. When you look at the history of innovation that we have had over the last more than 130 years, you see many firsts in the history of ABB. First time steam turbine, first time turbochargers, first time HVDC technology, first time industrial robot, first time two-arm industrial robot without a cage. That's ABB at its scale, and that's our technology history that has shaped us as a company. Now when we talk electricity, you see some interesting technologies in there. In the 50s, high voltage direct current technology that allowed to transport at that time electricity over sensational 80 kilometers of distance. In the meantime, we have come a long way. Today we're doing 3,000 kilometers, and I come back later on a little bit more. So innovation and pioneering technology leadership is at our heartland, and we are investing for that. We are driving our company this way. Every year we spend $1.5 billion on research and development. We got 8,500 people around the world purely focused on research and development. We got 30,000 engineering people that are working with us. We got all around the world, we got now a much modified and improved R&D footprint. Nowadays we do a lot of AI in Shanghai, we do it in the Silicon Valley. We just have now about 400 people in that field all around the world. So we are a nicely balanced global research and development community. But we are an open community. We work very closely with universities like the Imperial. We got more than 100 university collaborations going on. But we are also investing early seed money. In 2009, I set up ABB Technology Ventures. Since then, we have invested about $150 million in startup companies to really help them to get out the shoes and get going, to throw the ball into the future in terms of leading technology. Now, one of the collaborations that we have, and that we are really, really proud and happy about, is the collaboration here with the Imperial College. And there are many touch points. I just want to lay out a couple. We have founded many years ago the ABB Chair for Process Automation. And Nina Thornhill's work has been supported by ABB because we have all the time renewed the funding of the chair in that field. I'm really, really happy if you take our pilot plant here for carbon capture that was already mentioned in the beginning, where you can real life really touch and feel how such a plant works. And it was great today in the visit to see that there were students from Korea for multiple weeks using that lab and learning more. And I'm really proud to see how active and how well taken up this investment is from our side, because we really believe in strong collaboration with you, and we are very convinced that this is something that's not only good for Imperial and good for ABB, it's also good for society, because a lot of good work comes out. 3 examples of this good work that's going on as we speak at the moment is the work that we are doing together with a student on process operation. We're doing work on high voltage insulation together with you, new sensing concept. We saw this afternoon, a collaboration between ABB in Norway and the Imperial. So all together, great collaboration. Thank you very much for that. And thank you very much all in the room for doing this. So that's the basis of our relationship, and that's the basis of ABB. Now let's talk about what's going on in the world and what we should do to address the challenges that we have. When we look at our world around, there are many things that people are concerned about. There's one that is threatening all of us. And that's the climate change that we need to address. I will not look my kids in the eyes when I'm 80 and say I've done nothing about it. So what we did in ABB, we really shaped the company in the last years to be a major contributor and to really be leading edge also as an ambassador for new technologies to drive them. Because when you take the climate change situation, we got a lot of ambition out there. We got politicians that have made commitments what we want to do. But if you look at the amount of action that's happening, I think there is still a huge room for improvement that we should drive. Because we need to do one simple thing. We need to decouple economic growth from environmental impact. The population is growing, the resource demands are growing, CO2 emissions are growing. If you just look what happened in the last 10,000 years in terms of CO2 exhaust blowing into the air, unbelievable, totally unresponsible. We need to do something about it, and we need to drive it. So decoupling the economic growth, which we need to motor the world, from environmental impact is really what I want to talk today about and want to share with you some thoughts. So how do we do this? And what are the dimensions that we should work on? There are basically two fundamental things that we need to do. We need to consume less, and we need to provide more environmentally friendly. What does that mean? If you look at the amount of consumption that we have today for every dollar of GDP, it's too high. And we need to make sure that when we talk energy and electricity specifically, that we provide the additional dollar of GDP with less and less additional electricity consumption. And the secret there is energy efficiency. Let's drive energy efficient products, let's drive energy efficient solutions to really cut consumption in a significant way. Now the world will never be without consumption. And that means we need to look at that the remaining pattern of consumption is provided with the lowest possible environmental impact. So, less kilowatt used, more solar and renewables in the production of electricity will get us a long distance where we need to go as a company and as the planet. So what is really the challenge now that we should work on? The one is we need to master energy efficiency. And in energy efficiency, it's still mind-boggling when you look at the pattern that we face around the world. Because basically, we lose more than we use. We lose more than we use. If you take the pattern of energy losses across the industrial value chain, and you add up all the losses from the original primary energy to the final point of consumption, about 80% of the originally available energy is lost over the different stages. Now, if we use technology wisely, we can create impact, significant impact. The impact is so large that we can cut, with today available technology, the energy losses by up to 30%. And ladies and gentlemen, the US consumes about 20% of the primary energy that's produced. So if we would use energy efficient solutions that are already available today and make it mandatory that everybody uses it, we could cut the energy consumption in the world by the equivalent of more than the energy consumption of the United States of America. So there is a case to be made, there's a case to be driven to make sure that with all the euphoria about renewables, there's an opportunity right in front of us, right in front of our doorstep, that we need to work on today. And that's use energy efficient technology. And I will show you now a couple of examples of what's available. Take transformers. If you look at the number of transformers in the next 20 years, next 12 years, sorry, will triple in the world. There's so many consumption points of electricity popping up, there's so much grid being built, there will be a tripling of transformers in the world. And if we use energy efficient, meaning low loss transformers, you can cut the losses by up to 20%. We have a lot of transformers around in the world that are being sold today that are rice cookers, that are heat exchangers. And that's not good. So here it starts at the beginning of the energy value chain. Let's look at transformers. The second opportunity is in industry. Did you know that electric motors in industry consume 1/3 of the globally generated electricity? 1/3? And if you take a highly energy efficient motor that's available today, with a drive, which is a piece of power equipment that modulates the torque, the speed of the motor, and adapts it to the use pattern that it really has, we can save up to 50% of that electricity. That means a very significant impact on the world by just having energy efficient motors and drives in industry. And the amazing thing is, if you take that, it's even economically attractive. We have many customers where the payback of this investment is less than a year. Now, when you look at what's happening at the moment and what we are all doing every day, we're doing something which is the fastest growing user of electricity in the world. And that's data centers. If you look at the consumption of a large data center, one large data center consumes the equivalent of 25,000 households. And if you look every little click that we do for Google, that we do to check our emails, consumes electricity somewhere in the data center. 7%, 7%. That's 1/3 of the US energy consumption. 7% of the electricity globally goes into data centers today. And when you build modern data centers with the right kind of energy efficiency, you can save up to 50% of electricity. Just go into the cooling system of a data center and look what's happening in there. Look at the power conversion within a data center, where you might go in with 380 kV to the substation in front of the data center, and then you need to convert power down to 24 volt DC. And if you look at the conversion losses that you have there, using good technology helps us to preserve the planet and do it right. But it's not only new stuff that we need to look at. We recently did a project which was quite exciting. Some of you probably have heard about the high-speed trains in Germany called ICE, Intercity Express. And the first generation of the ICE was a very reliable product, was used for many, many years. But somewhere the operator realized there's a tremendous opportunity. Retrofitting these trains with modern propulsion technology, with modern motors, drives, power converters, is saving 15% of lifetime electricity consumption of a train. Can you imagine how much money that is? A train that goes millions and millions of kilometers. So my first message is very simple. We need to make sure we drive energy efficiency everywhere. And to do that, we need to do three things. We need to use and continuously develop technology. If you're there, you're doing that in your studies, you're doing it here in your academic work, you're driving technology. The second piece is we need to make people aware what the opportunity is, and that it's not only environmentally responsible, that it's economically attractive to really drive energy efficiency in a company, or in an operation, or in your house. And third, we need to take the politicians with us. If they want to achieve the 2% growth on CO2, the best, and in my eyes, the only viable option to get to that is to add to all the consideration on renewables a much stronger push on energy efficiency. We can do that today, we can change the world now, and we really need to make sure we act. So you might remember at the beginning I showed this graph 2 by 2, where we said consume less. The key theme here is energy efficiency. Now let's go to the second theme. Let's talk about providing electricity in a more sustainable way. And let's talk about what's going on around us, what we call the energy revolution. If we look at what renewables do to the world, it's quite simple. There's a tremendous opportunity to decarbonize energy supply. But it's also a challenge. We need to make sure that we master all building blocks of that future electricity value chain. Let me get started at the beginning. Let me start about supply. Now, when we talk about supply, what's happening out there? This is a village in Bavaria in 2008. And that's the village last week. One more time. 2008, last week. There's a tremendous amount of capacity being built around the world on the renewable side. And what does that do? It poses an opportunity and a significant challenge. I call it the quadruple challenge of supply. Because when you get renewables into the grid, what do you get? You get more feed-in points. You get longer distances. You get more volatility. And you get less predictability. These are the four things on the supply side that are happening when you connect renewables. So on the one hand, the cost of renewables has become super attractive. I was recently in Saudi, I was in Egypt 2 weeks ago. Now all the plants that are being auctioned off in the Middle East go below 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour as an IPP price for electricity. Wind is now at 2 cents per kilowatt hour. That's something that 5 years ago we would have thought is unthinkable. I still remember in fall 2015, we were together with the Indian energy minister. There was an auction, and the auction came out at 7.6 cents per kilowatt hour for solar. And we thought, okay, now the bottom has been reached. It will not get cheaper from now on. Well, today we are at 1.6. So the economical attractiveness is there, but the challenge of the more feed-in points, the longer distance, the higher volatility, and the less predictability is there. So we need to master that. And the second thing that we need to master is we need to turn these new sources of energy and electricity into predictable, reliable, decarbonized baseload supply. So the question is, with all the volatility, with all the movement in wind and solar, how can we get predictable, decarbonized baseload? And we had a discussion this afternoon with some of your colleagues already. 6 options. And there might be others around. 6 options how to get there. First option is you combine renewables with fossil power generation that still has a positive impact. It's better than having only fossil. And as it happens, solar and gas, for example, go pretty well with each other. The second opportunity is we combine renewables with nuclear. Nuclear is decarbonized, has other challenges. That's the second opportunity. The third is we combine different sources of renewables with each other. We combine wind with solar. Or we're doing at the moment a project where we're connecting a wind farm in the North Sea with a hydro dam in Norway. We're connecting with an 800 kilometer cable system, subsea cable system, the wind farm in the North Sea with the hydro dam in Norway, and through the intermittency of these sources, provide reliable baseload. We can also work on storage. And storage is not only the classic battery storage that everybody talks about. Storage can be all kinds of forms of storage of energy. It can be mechanical. We recently did a project in Kodiak Island in Alaska. Kodiak Island was an island, or is an island, where solar and wind were basically the energy mix. They did a little bit of storage on the battery side, and they powered up the entire island until they bought a new harbor crane. And every time the new harbor crane lifted a container of a ship, the island blacked out. Because there was not enough capacity there. And what did we do? We combined the flywheel with the harbor crane. Because the takeoff energy on the flywheel works very, very well with the demands that you have on a harbor crane. One ambitious vision that I believe will happen before my lifetime is over, and hopefully I live long enough to really see that, is building and managing a global grid. There's an association of countries, Japan, Korea, China, and Russia, that are in the process at the moment of building a power grid from the east of China to the west of Russia. That's 11 time zones. Well, if you have 11 done, there's only 13 left that you need to go for and connect. So technologically it's possible. Gridscope is an association chaired by the former head of State Grid of China. He has the firm ambition to build a global grid. That means wherever in the world the sun shines, you transport the power to the point of consumption, and you're independent of local volatility because you get the global grid going. And the last point that we can work on is smarter demand-side management. That if a cloud goes over the solar field, we make the charging of the electric car more expensive, so less people will be charging it. When the wind goes down for a while, we switch off the air conditioning for 2 minutes in our insurance office and make sure that we balance it off that way. So here are 6 options that we all need to work on to really master the supply and come up with a solution to the biggest challenge, to provide reliable, decarbonized baseload to our planet going forward. So that's the supply side that we need to work on. Now let's talk about how we transport this electricity. And what is technology doing? Now if you take the power grid over which we transport electricity, 20, 30 years ago it was quite boring. It was a one-directional flow, the power plant produced it, the factory consumed it, that's it. Today, it's going in all kinds of directions. Your house might be a power consumer at night, it might be a power plant in the morning, it might be a power storage device in the afternoon when you park your electric car. And how do we manage all of that? How do we drive that going forward? And what's the evolution? So if you take the evolution of the grid, the last 20 years or so, we had a move towards more renewable energy. We had a move from consumer to prosumer, and you also might be a producing entity. We had a very significant awareness rising that global warming is there, and we started to work on the modern grid of today, which is a multi-directional, pretty complex grid. But where are we going in the future? We're going to the Internet of Energy. We're going to Internet of Electricity, where any point at any time might have flows in all kinds of directions. And we need to manage that in a good way, and we need to drive it to make sure that when you run your semiconductor plant somewhere, your glass factory, your children's hospital, that you still have good quality power supply that conserves and supports lives rather than threatens them. So when we look now what this means in terms of transporting electricity, let's look at what's happening in the next years in terms of large-scale power connection. It's mind-boggling. There will be more than 15 billion a year spent on long-distance power transmission solutions in China, in the Americas, and in Europe over the next years. So there's a significant growth in the need for long-distance connections. And what we want to avoid is that with these connections, we lose electricity, we want to preserve it. And here comes a technology that was introduced in the 50s in the market called high voltage direct current, where you basically convert AC to DC power, because DC power over longer distances loses much less than AC. You put it in, and when you look now today, we have already built 75 of the systems all around the world. And if you look at the newest one, it's a 3,000 kilometer connection that is working on a 1.1 megavolt or 1,100 kilovolt level across China. And when you use this technology, you can reduce the losses by up to 50%. Let me give you 3 examples that are projects that are going on as we speak. The world's most powerful ultra-high voltage direct current link is currently being built in China. The capacity and now fasten the seatbelts, the capacity is 12 gigawatt. 12 gigawatt of power being transported over a distance of 3,000 kilometers. And you know what the energy efficiency is? 98%. 2% losses. 2% losses. The classic high voltage direct current, when we launched it, we were proud that we had 94 to 96%. Now we are at 98%, which is fantastic to really drive. We just completed a project in India where we bring 6 gigawatts of hydropower from the north of the Himalaya over 1,700 kilometers to the center of the Agra region. And it's a multi-terminal project where we had to solve the braking question, how do you brake and how do you convert and how do you multi-terminal set up a DC grid. And in China, as we speak, just last quarter, or this last quarter, first quarter this year, we got the award. We're involved now in the world's first ultra-high voltage direct current grid in China. So there's a tremendous opportunity here to use technology and drive the transport in an efficient way. We need to drive that. When I saw today the solutions that you have here, that you're working on, and the research topic that you have, I think you're right in the center of attention where the world will go in the next year. So when we transport all of this power, we talked about the supply side, now let's talk about where it arrives. The power arrives first at a substation, comes over a long distance line, and goes in a substation where the power gets converted. Now typically this is an area where a lot of energy might get lost. This is an area where the grid has the biggest downtime. This is an area where a lot of space is needed. So with a technology that we call digital substations, where you have the opportunity through a bus control system to wire up all the components in a substation in a completely different way, you're cutting the footprint by up to 30%. Now go with me to the mayor of New York and talk to him about the replacement of an old substation. When you tell him you have a solution which is digitally enabled, it needs less space, it needs a third less space, size of an American football field, he will get very happy because he can use that space for other solutions. When you go to one of our other customers, which is the grid of Inner Mongolia, where you have basically the size of Europe in terms of space, with the population of Switzerland, and very low density, a digital substation helps you to remote control the substation. You don't need to have much service work. So there's different value propositions coming out of the technology for customers all around the world. Now this is about technology that moves the electrons from A to B and transports them. What is equally as important, that we make sure the assets that we have installed in the grid are being maintained and monitored in a good way. And here there's a technology which is called asset health, which combines asset management, asset performance management, and workforce management in a way that you automatically optimize the operating loop and the maintenance loop of an asset called the power grid all around the world. Means less downtime, means much better workforce productivity, means much better visibility, means an opportunity to standardize and simplify processes all around the world. So when we take the electricity value chain, first step was decarbonize supply reliably. The second was transporting. Now let's look at the end towards the demand side. And what's happening on the demand side of electricity? More and more energy in the world is being consumed by the wire. The rail industry went from coal to diesel to electric. Houses become more and more electricity players, consumers. If I look at the house of my grandma, when I visited as a very young child, the only electrical device that she had was light. She had a wood stove, and there was no washing machine at the time. And I still remember when she got her first fridge. That's how old I am. And look at a modern house now. Have you ever gone out and counted the amount of AC-DC converters in your house? I recently asked my boys to do that. They went through the house and looked at how many AC-DC converters do we have in the house. What would you guess how much would you have in a modern house? 57. We have 57 AC-DC converters. That means we have 57 different areas where direct current is being used, whether it's an LCD TV, whether it's a charger for iPhone, whether it's a computer, whatever it is, 57. It just shows how complex the electricity pattern of a modern house is. And that's only one part, because there is cooling, there is the heat pump that you hopefully have, there's the storage in the basement that you got. So all together, we are moving towards a world where electricity as a carrier of energy is becoming more and more relevant. Now, one area that I want to specifically focus on today is electric mobility. At the moment, I think we are right in front of a positive dam break regarding mobility. The next 3 years, when we look back, when we are all older, when you are all as old as I am today, you will look back and say, wow, the years between 18 and 21 were really decisive to the growth. And I really believe that. Why? A lot of good stuff is happening. And great things are coming in terms of development. I'll just give you one example. 2 weeks ago in Hanover, we unveiled the world's fastest fast charging station. So we are charging now a car for 200 kilometers in 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Have you ever stopped how long it takes you to take an ice cream? Or to have a coffee and have a quick pit stop? 8 minutes is okay. So the challenge that was there for a long while, we need charging at a high pace, is solved. The second piece is, look at the cars. It's happening now. If you look at the amount of EV sales, they're going through the roof. And a lot of new models are coming. Do you recognize this car? Anybody knows what this car is? Somebody in this room should know it, especially here in the UK.
Jaguar.
Yes, thank you. It's the Jaguar I-Pace. It's a car that's coming out now. It has 450 kilometers of range. And it will cost 20% less than a Tesla S. So it's coming at a high speed, and when you go around the world, key countries of the world have committed to really move. There's a tremendous amount of interest to really change the pattern of individual mobility. And a lot of countries have already made firm commitments, either on what kind of a size of fleet they want to have, what size of charging infrastructure they want to have, or at what time they will ban combustion engine vehicles. And the OEMs, the car manufacturers, are working in the same way. If we look at the Frankfurt Motor Show this year, will be the dam break. Because if we look at the lineup, and we are working with all of the OEMs because we are strong on EV charging, I'll come back to that in a minute. The lineup has never been bigger on pure electric vehicles. And I can tell you, driving one myself in 3.5 years, it's fun. It's really fun. And when you have driven that for a while, you will ask yourself, why do I drive combustion engine cars at all? So what does it really take to live and to win in e-mobility? There are 4 things. First, we need the cars. And I think that riddle is solved. This year, we will have a launch of new cars that we have never seen before. The cars will be affordable. The cars will be interesting in terms of technology. In the next 12-18 months, the ramp-up of production will go very significant. Second, we need to be able to charge the car. And then we need, again, 3 things. First point, safety. Super important to provide the electricity safe. Now, the 350 kV charging station that I showed before to you, imagine what it would do if you have 350 kV at 400 volts over a standard cable. What would happen with the cable? It would become a welding gun, right? It would overheat, and you would weld the plug into the car. So what did we do? We have an oil-cooled cable. And the oil cooling goes all the way into the pin, because otherwise you could not absorb the heat that you get when you charge a car in 8 minutes for 200 kilometers with 350 kV. Wouldn't work. safe is important. Speed is important, we solve that. And the third is availability. And if you look at what's happening at the moment, the first networks are popping up. We just won 2 weeks ago to be the key supplier for Volkswagen in the US for Electrify America. Volkswagen has agreed with the US as part of the diesel scandal settlement to build a network of EV charging stations around the US. We have now the first wave of charging stations will be 437 charging stations around a part of the US, and there will be thousands coming going forward to drive that in a good way. And each station will have between 4 and 12 chargers available to the grid. The third point is, and that's one that is totally underestimated, we need to reinforce the grid. So go mentally with me into the boardroom of Porsche, where we recently had a discussion with the CEO that said, I want to build fast charging stations. They said, I want to have these 350 kV chargers, and I want to have 6 each in that station. And that's it, because it will be wonderful, that's what we're going to do. And I said, congratulations, you're building a blackout machine. Because 6 times 350 kV, that's 2 megawatts. That's a small village. Or, it's like switching on 2,000 hair dryers at the same time. Can you imagine what happens when you switch on 2,000 hair dryers at the same time in your street? What will happen? What will happen? You blow your fuses, you have a blackout. So the grid reinforcement is super duper important to make sure when we go for e-mobility, we really live it in the right way. And the fourth point naturally goes back to the very beginning of my speech. We need to integrate renewables. Because only if we fill up the electric car with solar, hydro, wind-generated electricity, then we really have a sustainable value chain end to end. So we need to live this technology, we need to drive it. But what we also need to do is, we need to take the consumer with us. And to take the consumer with us, we have done something pretty exciting. We have become the global sponsor of the Formula E Racing Series, which is called now the ABB Formula E Racing Series. We have 13 races all around the world. The weekend before last, we were in Paris. We raced in the center of Paris with electric race cars that look like Formula 1 cars. They go up to 250 kilometers an hour. It's super duper exciting. We had more than 50,000 people watching it. And can you imagine what you do when you bring young kids, young families in the center of a village, in the center of a city, close to this technology? They get excited. And that's what we want to do. That's our contribution to the world also, to show there is something out there, a technology that's not only attractive, ecologically, it's also financially interesting. So with all these changes, what do we need to do to really master the situation? We talked about the supply side dynamics. We talked about the demand side dynamics. But to live this in the right way, we need to make sure we master this complexity. That we master not only the flow of the electrons, but the bits and bytes to control this new electricity value chain. And the way we will do that, we will also change the way of controlling and mastering the electricity value chain. And when you look at what innovation and technology does here, we are moving from being a copper and iron provider, transformers, how it started 130, 140 years ago, towards becoming a provider of controlled grid operations. That was up to the year 2000, 2005. Then we have worked the last years on a digitally enabled power grid, and now we are using AI to make sure we have an electricity value chain that is sustainable and reliable. Now, on artificial intelligence, a lot of people are afraid of it. I'm not, because it helps us to augment human potential. If you look at the computing power, if you look at the analytic power that AI brings, whether it's from data analytics or from reasoning, there's a tremendous opportunity to augment human potential by driving AI hand in hand with humans going forward. Just to close out on 3 examples how we use AI today. That's happening today. we use IBM Watson for much more precise cloud and weather pattern forecast. We forecast when the rain shower goes over the solar field to make sure we can optimize supply and demand pattern in a good way. We take AI to drive asset health, as I already laid out before, looking at usage patterns, looking at damage patterns, looking at maintenance patterns helps us to optimize reliability. And when you take EV charging and we take e-mobility, we are at the verge of creating a new system. And we should shape this new system in a way that AI helps us to predict the pattern of usage and to make sure we can proactively dampen the load, for example, through a smart optimization between tariff and use pattern of individuals, supported, enabled by mass data analytics and reasoning of users all together. So ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to share with you what the opportunity is for us, but also what the mandate is. I said we need to run the world in a way that we decouple economic growth from environmental impact. And my mandate is very simple, and my request to you is very simple. Let's really team up. Let's make sure that A, available energy efficient technologies are being used at scale to ensure that we have a minimum environmental impact and as much efficiency as possible, every day in every organization. And second, we must continue to work to solve what I call the triple riddle of sustainable electricity supply. We need to provide decarbonized, reliable baseload and transport it reliably. We need to make sure on the demand side, environmentally friendly technologies like e-mobility is being used at mass and scaled up. And we need to make sure we master this new complex situation in a way that we don't have downtime, that we have reliable energy supply for factories, for houses, for hospitals all around the world through the use of classic technologies in AI. So today is say it very, very simple. We need to run the world without consuming the earth. And I look forward to write this future together with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Ulrich. I'll do a proper vote of thanks in a little while. Let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Tim Green. I'm Director of the Energy Futures Lab. I'm just going to help in this session of question and answer. So we have a couple of roving mics, which I can see one at the back and one at the front. So can you put your hand up to indicate if you want to ask a question, and then wait till a mic reaches you, and if you would, introduce yourself briefly. So we'll take the question here first. Thank you.
Yassine Moulerchid from EBRD, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. You discussed the decarbonized supply. What do you think of power to gas?
Look, I think when we look at the moment, there will be a need to still have a certain part of fossil supply, and there's a need to have a certain way of using alternative technologies like power to gas to complement what we have going on the renewable side and the storage side. So I think short term, and I mean short term, the next 3 to 5 to 8 years, it probably plays a role. Very long term, I don't think it will play a role. Very long term, we're gonna transport the energy right away over the grid rather than power to gas.
Where else are we going for a question? In the back room.
Yeah, actually, so I'm with Librec Associates, and it's very interesting what you just said about not needing power to gas. So electricity right now supplies maybe 20%, 30% of our energy needs, and 40% of our energy need is heat, residential heat, industrial heat. How do you imagine that we will use electricity to supply that? That's just unthinkable.
Look, I think it's very clear that this will not be a light switch that we switch on and tomorrow there's a fundamental different picture. But when you look at the pace of ramp-up, it's quite significant. If you go with me to some countries of the world, where new building standards for houses mean now it needs to be a zero-emission house, it needs to be a net provider of electricity by using solar in a mandatory way, by using heat pumps in a mandatory way. There's tremendous amount of technology around that can help us to work towards that. And I think we're going to see the next years a further acceleration of this technology, but you will not short-term provide all the heat that you need in houses fully with the renewable technology. But again, I think if we go 5, 10, 15 years out, you will see a tremendous change. Go back to the little picture that I showed you about the village in Bavaria. 2008, nothing. 2018, a huge amount of provision. Go with me now to go with me to Saudi, where new cities are being built, where it is mandatory now for the new cities to have solar as the main provider. In that case, it's not for heat, it's for air conditioning. On that side, the same in Egypt. If you go up to the Nordic countries, you have many cities, you have many countries that are already supplying it. So I think you will see a pattern change gradually over time, and I personally think the pattern change will be accelerated.
And you still imagine that electricity will, in this passive house, you still imagine that electricity will be the main provider of heat in that case?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw a question here.
Yeah.
Can you just wait for the mic to reach you? Thank you.
But electricity only indirect by either using solar or heat pumps in the ground.
Hi, I'm Dan Carson from FTSE Russell. I'm also an MBA student here at Imperial College. You made a very compelling case for energy efficiency or your products. What's holding everyone back?
Look, I think the three things that I laid out. First of all, making sure people understand what technology is around. It's amazing when I go to peer companies and sit down with the CFO. I recently sat down with the CFO of a large aluminum company in the Middle East, and we just talked with him through how many basis points of profitability he could provide by changing the technologies that he only bought 6-8 years ago in a modern plant very, very cheaply. So he optimized the 3% of the life cycle cost of the motor really nicely, and he blew the 94% out of the window. We said, look, if you rip in a pretty new plant everything out that you just bought and change it, the payback is less than 2 years. So the one thing is you need to make people aware and get them going. The second piece is it's very important that at a young age we change the paradigm how people learn to optimize. You should not optimize by spending the least possible on equipment at the time when you buy it. You should optimize by knowing what the life cycle cost of your equipment is. And I can tell you we had another example, Saudi, very recently, in a Saudi discussion, they had bought very, very cheap Chinese transformers. And they kicked us out and said, look, we have very, very cheap transformers there. We cannot afford the ABB products. And after a while they came back and realized they cannot afford not to buy our stuff. So much electricity was lost for downtime and for lack of energy efficiency that went there. The third point that we really need to make sure is our politicians need to wake up and shake up. Because it's very clear that there is a tremendous opportunity out there, and it should be both the carrot and the stick. We have seen countries like Australia that use the stick and said, you move from classic lighting to LED. End of story. If you don't do that, you get a fine. That's the stick. We have seen countries that incentivize and say, if you buy energy efficient equipment, I only charge you half of the VAT on your equipment. So I think what we need to do is we need to drive the awareness, We need to do the education. We need to make sure the politicians know what they're talking about and they get the right kind of arguments. And then everybody in this room should start now to look at it. Look, I give you my own example. In 2007 to 2010, I built a house with classic lighting. In the last half a year, we ripped out the whole system on classic lighting. We put LED in, and the payback for that renewable, for the renewal of this thing, is less than 3 years. So we need to go for it. So I would invite you all, take your own role in relevant in your own space, become an ambassador and share with people what's out there, and help to influence the use of technology, the drive for education, and the awareness of politicians and regulators to get going. I also think certain technologies should be banned right away. When you go today to MediaMarkt, you can buy fridges which has an energy standard which should be forbidden. Should just be forbidden. Because the pure consumer gets ripped off. They think they buy a cheap fridge. And the poor family that buys such a fridge, they pay for the fridge 10 times over their lifetime because they have chosen the wrong electricity and energy efficiency.
Okay, one more question in the front.
No, please.
Hydrogen economy, you didn't actually mention this at all, which is kind of a complementary to the variability of wind. There's already a gas network, and of course it is possible to generate hydrogen and inject it into the gas network, which is actually done in Germany. You obviously perhaps do not believe because of the low efficiency of this sort of transaction. And the other things about households and the requirement of conversion from AC to DC. Can you actually see in the future DC networks within houses?
Yeah. First question on hydrogen. Look, hydrogen is an attractive technology. It's a really interesting technology. But the issue is distribution. Yes, you have some gas distribution networks, but fill up a car safely with a hydrogen network and build it up to a car station. Build it up into your own house. We have already, the world has 2 distribution networks for energy, already well developed. The classic fuel distribution network and the electricity distribution network. And my personal prediction is that the power cost for solar, wind will come down so fast that it's not worthwhile considering adding investments in addition what you need to do on renewables, on solar and wind with the grid, to build a hydrogen network that is globally encompassing. That's my own prediction. Let's see what comes out. The second piece, yeah, look, the DC house is really interesting. When you go into a modern house, you will very quickly realize in a modern house, it might well be the only AC consumer is your washing machine. And the rest of it you can do basically today on a DC basis. There are DC dishwashers, there are DC lighting, all your TV, all your electronics is anyway DC. So yes, we even have a house, we have a DC house in Switzerland, where you go with AC to the house, and then everything within the house is DC. Because it's very nice, solar is DC, battery is DC, your consumers are DC. Why should you have 57 AC-DC converters in your house and lose the energy on the conversion? Why shouldn't you have a DC house? The issue is standards. Standards and building standards. We need to convince the regulators to go there. And again, completely newly built systems are considering it. There's a $400 billion investment considered in Saudi for a new city called Neom. And that new city, the consideration is, should we build a DC city? Should we, right from the beginning, say, for that part, regulation is, it's DC, we're going to get going, and we're going to drive it. So let's see where it comes out from an energy efficiency perspective. It's the right solution. I can tell you in another area, we have built the first DC data center in the world, where we have, because at the very end, if you come with HVDC technology, why would you go to AC and DC a couple of times until you go down to the 24-volt DC supply in the server? Why couldn't you go all the way DC? So the technology, again, is very attractive. regulatory environment makes it pretty difficult to go this way today.
Oh, forest plans, okay.
Now
I
we're picking
think
up, huh?
in the interest of time, what I'm going to do is hear the three questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll take a response, and then I think that will be it. So, third row from the back, I saw a hand. That's, yes, you, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about the horizon of the investments that you're making within the company and how that interacts with being a public company?
And could you just introduce yourself ever so briefly?
Revi Vergas from the Climate Change and Finance Program here.
Thanks. And could you pass the microphone forward 2 rows, and then we have another question.
You want to know? Yeah, I'm a MSc student at University of London. I have a question about, you mentioned in the talk about sourcing electricity from far places and transporting it to where there is demand. How well do you think that would work with the global push for distributed generation as well?
Michelle Liu, commodity analyst. I was taking back to the energy policy or investment for renewables. So you mentioned all the examples basically on the developed countries or slightly bit rich. And how do you encourage developing countries where they have HIV to fight, for example, in Africa, and to encourage those countries to upgrade?
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I answer in the reverse order, if you're okay. Start with the last one first. Yeah, look, Africa gets ripped off. Very simple. We got a super challenge in Africa, just as a side. I'm a fan of Africa. I think we can do a lot there, but we must do a lot there. Why? In Africa today, it's double exploited in an unfair way. The natural resources are being exploited by companies outside from Africa. The wealth is created somewhere out. So nothing of the natural wealth stays. And if you look at the demand, the only thing that's growing faster than the population in Africa is imports. There's not enough local value add to really get going and supply the African continent. So what we need to do is, we need to build a bridge between natural resources and the local demand by building a local value chain. Building a local power infrastructure as a key requirement for that value chain will be absolutely paramount. We're working with the World Bank, we're working with private investors to really get it going. We need a power grid of Africa. We need a power backbone, an HVDC backbone that goes all the way from above Sahara to all the way down to South Africa. We need to connect the countries in. We need to make sure that's happening. What we need to do on the consumer side is we need to stop that people get ripped off. Because the amazing thing is, you sell cheap fridges and you rip people off with them. Because electricity is expensive, or maybe not even available, and you take this expensive electricity into very inefficient equipment, and you think you save money. You need to educate, and there, I think the government has a key role, because most of that stuff gets financed anyway. So when you finance it anyway, you better finance stuff that's environmentally friendly and ecologically good and attractive from an energy efficiency side, because otherwise you pay the price twice, and you pay it in a way that's not reasonable. So that's the Africa piece. The second question was the far places. Look, it's not a question of either or. It's a question of and. I give you India. I just talked about the 1,300 kilometer line, 6 gigawatt for the Himalaya to the center, HVDC. And at the same time, we're working with Mr. Modi and his government to power up 30,000 villages with microgrids. And I did not talk about microgrids today. I could talk all day about it. So there will be a coexistence between distributed power and power backbone that allows us to use renewables in a good way. And that brings me back to the first question. When we look at investment of ABB, how do we really look ourselves as a stock-listed company into the future, and how do we invest? Look, I don't manage the share price. I manage the company. And we have in our statutes of ABB that we manage this company for long-term value creation. We had even had a vote of our shareholders recently in April, the beginning of April, in the global shareholders meeting, where we changed the statutes towards managing the company for a very long-term perspective and take the right investments to make a contribution to the world. So when you take this $1.5 billion of spend, when I started as CEO 5 years ago, a very high percentage of that went into maintaining what we have. And far too little went into forward-looking, longer-term investments. And by the way, far too much also went into managing R&D rather than doing it. So we cut the managing of the R&D cost significantly down, and we made, for example, sure that we have a career path for experts that allow people to do R&D and get better paid over time, because a lot of our people got only higher pay when they did less R&D and more administration. The more you administrate, the higher you get in the level, and the more you get paid in the classic pay system. And we threw that overboard and said, okay, let's have the expert path and get it going. And that means you also have people that are interested in doing longer term stuff. Then we changed the pattern, and we are investing very significant amounts in long-term development of technology. Look, my customers on the utility side. I remember when I met the first customer and we talked about a digital substation. And this customer has hundreds of them. He said, you know what? Let's do a small pilot. And let's test it for 3 years. And then let's consider doing a pilot with 5. And then we might do that. So it's a 10-year cycle of adoption, but it's also sometimes a 10-year cycle of development. Working on the next generation of an HVDC transformer, where you have an 1100 kilowatt transformer that would not fit into this room, and doing that in a way that's reliable, doesn't blow up, you need a very, very long-term perspective. But we also need to make sure we have the vehicles to really do even further out technology development. And that's ABB Technology Ventures, where we're investing, as I said before, very, very long-term, very forward-looking, innovative technologies. And then we drive partnerships with long-term partners like Microsoft. We're working with Samsung, Panasonic, and BYD on the battery technology side to take the long-term development. So basically what we're doing is we're managing the company today for reasonable profit, that our shareholders get a good return now, but we're also managing the company to fulfill its long-term purpose, to really have the technologies that help us to run this world without consuming the earth.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to join us for some refreshments at the reception just outside. But before that, I'd just like to say a few words of thanks to Ulrich. I was very struck, and I'm sure everyone else is, that you started and have now concluded your talk with that passion for change and innovation and change for the long-term good. And I think you'll always find a ready audience at Imperial College talking about the need to invest in long-term research and development. So that's a very welcome message for us. Important, I think, also that your early emphasis on energy efficiency. If you want to do what your slide says, running the world without consuming the earth, we need that focus on efficiency, which we often lose sight of, and that's foolish of us. And I think your coupling of technology with behavioural change and the information that education that must underpin that and regulatory change was a welcome message for an institute that sets out to join up across the disciplines. Very interesting, your 6 solutions for integrating renewables.
I promised them this afternoon.
You promised them this afternoon. We have our own list. It's slightly different, but not very, and I think we might have an interesting discussion about the definitional differences. Also very struck by what you said about the things that have already changed, that have really challenged our perceptions of what's possible and what's not. The solar prices collapsing to 1.6 cents per kilowatt hour, what that means for the viability of all sorts of technologies and the future viabilities for some of them. And also being able to transmit 12 gigawatts over 3,000 kilometers at 98% efficient.
Cool.
It's very cool. When I first heard the former chair of State Grid China talk about this global energy interconnect, thinking, as you said, connecting across the 12 time zones and what that does for your energy management, it was hard to believe that was feasible. But those figures suggest it's feasible, and now we're going to go and scratch our heads about the economics. And to finish up, You talked about the dam brake effect in electric vehicles. I think that chimes with a lot of what people in this institution think about the future of electric vehicles. And that push towards grappling with the complexity and the control of future grids and the role that technologies such as artificial intelligence play in that. So I think there was a huge amount in your talk for whatever discipline audience members came with this evening. So thank you very much for a very wide-ranging and very interesting talk.
Thank you very much.